Welcome to Unlabelled and Limitless, the podcast where we challenge stereotypes, break down barriers, and have real conversations about life through a neurodivergent lens. I'm your host, Lois Bainham. I'm joined by my co-host and brother, Ian. In this episode, we're talking about Rejection Sensitivity Dysphoria, or RSD, something that shows up a lot for people with ADHD and autism, but it also affects people with dyslexia, dyspraxia, and other neurodivergent profiles. We're going to share some of our own experiences navigating RSD, how it ties into perfectionism and the constant pressure to mask, plus the emotional weight of always trying to fit in or avoid criticism, especially in a work or school setting. It really is a lot. We also get into the psychological impact of being told what you can't do over and over again, and how this can shape the way that we see ourselves. And because individual disabilities often go unrecognized, we talk about why it's so important to create environments where neurodiverse people are truly understood and supported. Okay, let's dive in.
By staying in the room, you are consenting.
What are we consenting to? I think you're consenting to speaking to me.
I'm just throwing that.
All right. So today we're going to have a discussion about rejection sensitivity dysphoria. Rejection sensitivity dysphoria is something that's more heavily associated with ADHD and often with females, but it isn't synonymous to ADHD and females. It exists amongst all sorts of different people diagnosed with autism, dyslexia, dyspraxia, etc. What are your thoughts, Ian? You are this page that are heavily focused on ADHD, and you and I have both experienced very intense emotions that other people may not have understood or may not. I do wonder on the lack of research around males' experience, what your thoughts are about that.
So I think it was something that impacted me more when I was younger. I can count several occasions where the way that I reacted to something, a criticism more than anything, it's a hard one because it's trying to distinguish RSD from the trying to be a perfectionist element of something like autism. I think the two go hand in hand. Because the more you try and be a perfectionist and somebody picks up on something, the more you have the reaction to that.
I think it's really good that you brought that up because I was just talking to somebody about that yesterday. Perfection is very prevalent amongst females with ADHD. It's prevalent amongst people with autism as well. I didn't used to hand my homework in at school, not because it wasn't done, but because I didn't want it to not be perfect. I didn't want to get anything less than a good grade. If I knew I hadn't given it the time it needed, if I knew I'd left it till the last minute, I just wouldn't hand it in the workplace where I could have excelled and didn't because I'd been so afraid that part of that, as you said, kind of goes hand in hand with that rejection sensitivity dysphoria that, like, if I don't try, I can't fail. So then people can't be disappointed in me in that way. Like, yeah, they'll be disappointed, but not because I'm a failure, just because I'm a disappointment, right? And that's easier than failing. And obviously, as kids, I didn't understand that that's what was going on in my mind. Would you say that that was a similar experience for you with the perfection, or did that perfectionism or that need to be perfect come out in a different way for you?
I think my need for perfectionism wasn't necessarily to be perfect, it was just blend in. Because there was always that element in my head. If I did something that was so obvious or something that somebody would pick up on, then they'd see straight through and they'd see my autism. The perfectionist element came from that it was more to blend in, more to mask. Said when it came to schoolwork, high school and exams, I didn't necessarily give my full potential. And that's where the masking element came in as well. So it was trying to be perfect, but in a sense imperfect, because it was more to fit in with the crowd that I was with. For example, when it came to the exams and my exam results, everything was straight down the middle. Everything was average. Because it was enough to pass, but it wasn't A's, because that would have made me stand out. I knew at school, when I went to Batley, that was quite a difficult environment to be in the sense that I didn't know where I actually fitted in with that. I often felt with the conversations that I had with them that they felt threatened, because how dare somebody come along that can intellectually match, doesn't have tutors, doesn't have this and that. But so I didn't feel that I fitted in with that group, similar to the people that I was around. If I demonstrate that, then they'd be able to see straight through it as well. So I think that's where the rejection sensitivity comes in, because I was trying to juggle and just be there in the middle.
You don't want to stick out too much. You want to exist in the background, do enough to be able to do what you need to do. Mum always said the most important thing is that you're happy, and I'd never push you towards one career or another. She supported us through those things. I think something that's difficult for any parent to predict, especially for somebody like you, where you were autistic and in a private school. I went to the local high school. I was kind of middle of the road, but that was seen as being really good where I went. I stood out because I did sports and I wanted to joke around and do all of those things in that different environment, because we were all working class from Southampton. So it didn't really impact on me in the same way that did with you. And not because I wanted to fit in with people, wasn't just amazing. And again, that's something a lot of people with ADHD go through. And I don't know if it's the same for autism, but we hop from habit to habit. And when I say habit, it's like creative interest. Every other day, it's like a new company, and I'm going to make soaps. And I'm sitting next to me with an art box full of quilling because I was going to make Christmas decorations and sell them on Etsy. And obviously, I'm not going to do that. And I've got a box of shit that I'm not going to fail. So that's really common amongst people with ADHD. Like, if I don't try, I won't fail. The actual rejection sensitivity dysphoria that comes into it is because you want to please people. You want to make people happy because you want the dopamine of making people happy. And that gives you energy for other things. Avoid being embarrassed. You want to be seen as good, right? All of those things build up. And the tiniest little thing that's wrong then is world ending to us. And again, I don't know if that's something that you experience in the same way, but the tiniest thing, being misunderstood, is world ending. Being misquoted or something is world ending, or being told no for something that we think should just be easy to do, world ending. World War III could break out outside the window and we'll be like, okay, everybody, come along. This is the plan. We've got a tunnel built here and a supply closet over here. And it's just two totally different things where the world ends for us over these tiny rejections. Yeah, in the grand scheme of things, we have this justice sensitivity that drives us to being crisis maverick, where we're just like, yeah, let's go.
That's definitely to do with living in a world that constantly misunderstands. I'd probably say that the motivations with me on the autism side isn't necessarily, because it's self-preservation, but isn't necessarily about how someone else is feeling or how that comes across to someone else. I think it's more to do with that masking element. If you're not doing things a certain way or saying things the right way, there's that fear of being exposed. The moment that someone is critical over something that you've either said or done, it's that feeling. That's where the RSD then, because it's that feeling of you're about to be exposed, you're about to be found out. And it's the worst thing in the world. You're spending all of that time, that emotional energy, trying to mask to fit in because people don't understand. And the moment that somebody says something, that's the feeling that then comes off that you've been found out or seen through, and then the world's going to end. But then there's kind of the other side to it as well, where it's do tend to know anyway. And you get that again with the misunderstandings. You get the criticism that, oh yeah, you'll never do this or you'll never do that. But so many parents where children have been diagnosed being told it's like a death sentence. It's like the end of the world. Your child will never do this and they'll never do that. I think that's where it starts to come from, because you're constantly being told all the things you will never do. At some point, I switched from, maybe it was to do with those emotional impact of constantly being told that, to, do you know what? I'm going to show you what I'm capable of doing. Every time somebody said, you will never, I went, do you know what? Watch me.
Yeah. And something very similar that we both share. I have the same kind of feeling when somebody tells me that I can't do something or I'm not going to achieve it. I just think, watch me. But do you think we really need to put children through that level of trauma where they're told by teachers they're never going to make anything of their lives, or that they're just bad because they can't stop moving in class? Do we have to put kids through that for them to finally get to the point as when they have to think, I'm going to show you, and then expend so much more energy trying to get there? Because maybe that isn't the right path for that person. I think of paths I've gone on and I'm like, wow, I did that just to show that person, and I could have spent all that time doing something more practical.
Yeah, I think that's something that frustrates me, because I'm referring to a time when there wasn't much information, where it could be detrimental. Just being found out you're not severely struggling. Just anything that was different to the norm and being singled out. Whereas I think with children these days, there is that much information out there that the frustration that I have is that children shouldn't be put through that in school. But what's the alternative? Because what schools tend to do and what the education system tends to do is go, right, we understand that you need to behave like this or you need to act like that. You'd have thought by now it would have come a lot further ahead to the point where people could actually start to look at that and go, oh, do you know what? This is actually a thing. This is the impact. And be empathetic, especially from a teaching perspective.
Oh,
I don't always agree with shielding. It's a bit like the fable with the butterfly in the cocoon. If you cut the cocoon open, the butterfly is not going to be strong enough. There has to be that balance, that understanding, but bringing somebody on that journey and supporting them on it.
yeah.
Because you end up in the position that I was in, where you're either having to mask it to fit in, or somebody's telling you that you have to fit in. There doesn't seem to be a middle ground with that. And from the point of view of someone who was autistic and growing up, that's not something that you can suddenly switch and go, it has to be supported.
I had that same conversation with somebody yesterday. Workplace accommodations are great, but most of what we do is put the onus on the person with the disability to educate people, to defend their status as a disabled person. If you have an invisible disability, it's even harder because it's very difficult for people without invisible disabilities to, hey, just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not going on.
You can't just do something.
With all the best will in the world, you're putting so much emphasis on people with a disability if it is impacting how you receive educational services, how you attend services, how you are able to do your work, or preventing you from having equal access to work that other people have. The emphasis is on that person to change, to meet the environment. You would not say to somebody that had just lost their legs. So I take it like late diagnosis. This person grew up with 2 legs and they lost a leg, right? Somebody grew up their whole life with ADHD and then they're diagnosed with it. You wouldn't say to that person who comes to you and says, hey, I might have been able to do that job before, but I'm missing a leg now. And I'm not going to be able to do A, B, and C. You wouldn't turn around to that person and say, actually, you just need to go and regrow your leg. Right? Right. So maybe this isn't the best thing for me. And if there's a job where I could just sit down instead of having to walk around on a wooden leg all day, that would be better because I can do that for you. And they're like, no, you need to. And it's so much harder then to kind of say, hey, I have this thing that like doesn't look a certain way, doesn't really like act a certain way, but it does. And sometimes things are going to happen because of my like disability. People think you're just making, and it's happened more than once that I roll my eyes in meetings, or that I've said things that have like been slightly off cuff in the way you just said. My entire team hates me because they think I'm rolling my eyes. And I do, because I always say shit at the wrong time, right? I dance into freaking rooms when there's a funeral happening and I'm like, oh shit, sorry, nobody told me it was a funeral. Move back out of the room. And it's just, I've got an auditory processing disorder, but a phenomenal audio memory. So then I'm not going to get promoted because I'm unprofessional because I roll my eyes in a meeting. And it's like, when you kind of deal with those things year after year, or you thinking like, hey, why can't I move up? And it's for something like that. It is personal. So then when somebody says something that's aligned with that, it's like, oh, it's because you hate me. It's because the entire world hates me. And if I'm in a really bad way, Brian has to deal with me over and over again for like weeks on end. Do you hate me? It's okay if you don't want to be near. I feel like I'm hated and I have to like, rumination is something you and I both do and is big with autism and ADHD, but I don't know if that's something that plays in with you. Do you feel that kind of rejection or?
But that's an interesting one because it has highlighted something that I've had many discussions over, being in meetings online, but is probably more apparent now after COVID for a lot more people. And I think that's a topic to expand on next time, more around things like Zoom calls and the whole concept of should cameras be on or off, because that has a big impact on people who are neurodiverse and the impact that has on them in meetings. So that's something that I'd want to pick up at next time.
Join us for the next episode where we will continue to talk about rejection sensitivity dysphoria and the impact of Zoom meetings issues for the neurodiverse community.
Thanks for listening to Unlabelled and Limitless, where we hold space for stories that challenge norms and celebrate neurodivergent voices. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you're feeling generous, leave us a rating or review. It helps more people find their way to these conversations. We've got more real talk coming your way soon, so please don't forget to follow or subscribe wherever you're listening. And until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and remember, you don't have to fit into a box to belong.